Hey everybody, welcome back to Brainpower. I'm Bowen Belmer and this is episode 16. Right off the bat, I need to come clean so I can maintain my podcaster integrity and admit that there is a huge part of today's episode and a part of our guest story that I was not aware of before recording today. And it ended up being an extremely interesting addition to the podcast episode. So definitely stick around to hear that. It is about our guest being prosecuted by the United States federal government because of activities related to Bitcoin. It is heavily interesting. Joining us today is Mark Rizzn Hopkins. You may also know him as Dr. Bitcoin. He has been involved in crypto since 2011 and part of many things, including the Cube, Ross DAO, Ukraine DAO, and many other things throughout his crypto journey. He provides excellent insights into crypto over the years, as well as working on all of these different projects. And as I mentioned before, being somebody who was personally prosecuted by the federal government due to activities related to Bitcoin, what that was like and what the implications are of that, and policy and government and all of these things surrounding freedom technology as we look to the future, which is extremely important from the perspective of decentralized AI. So without further ado, here is Mark Rizzn Hopkins.
I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
You're listening to Brainpower.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Brainpower. This is episode 16, and joining me today, you might know him as Mark, you might know him as Rizzn, but either way, if you don't know him already, you will after this episode. Mark Rizzn is joining us. Thank you for jumping on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So to give the listeners a little bit of a background, I cold DM'd you on X the other day because I was doing a little bit of just social media researching on with regard to Morpheus just to see what was out there, like if anyone else had made content that I maybe had missed. And you at the time, I'm not sure if you still are, but were hosting a show with the Merge TV, and you and your co-host were talking about Morpheus, and it caught my eye because this was in 2024, early 2024. I think it was February or March. And so you guys were picking up on it very early. And I thought that your insights were very interesting, and the conversation, it was cool to see that conversation a year after it happened, after some of the developments that have now occurred within Morpheus. And then I started diving into other things you were involved in, and you've been involved in a lot of really awesome stuff. So Mark, can you give like a little bit of a background on who you are and what you've done in the space, what you're doing in the space?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been around since 2011, so at this point, there's very little I haven't done in the space. I started out in crypto as a journalist. I've been an AI guy, I would say, going back to my school days, even though it's nothing like what we would call AI today. Specifically for the crypto side of things, I've been an OTC seller of Bitcoin for most of that time. I was involved in the Ross DAO organization for a while, and Ukraine DAO as well as their dev pod leader. Yeah, I guess one of the most successful instances of a DAO since we actually achieved our mission and were able to fold the DAO, right? How I got involved with Morpheus, or how I kind of got in that loop, was David Johnson and some of the other undoxed members of the core team, I guess, were all kind of in the Texas blockchain ecosystem. And the Merge, which was the podcast I was on a couple of years ago, you mentioned, they shared a building with the Texas Blockchain Council. And so it was a kind of a great place to have a tech-based production, because people would just rotate through the building, coming in and meeting people. And I probably heard about it pre-launch. And a lot of those videos were done either concurrent to or just prior to the TCM launch.
Okay. Awesome. Well, right place, right time. But I guess, it tends to be that case in crypto where when I've gotten more involved with different projects, I realize how small some of the community actually is. It's huge in some ways and then not in others. And I know that, well, first of all, taking a step back, your involvement in Ross DAO, very cool, especially now given, the fact that he has been pardoned. He's a free man. We've all seen him on the stage at Bitcoin 2025, and very much looking forward to see what he does next. And then Ukraine DAO as well. So the Morpheus community actually has a decent representation in Ukraine, and especially some individuals who are really, really, really heavily involved. And so, that's pretty awesome as well. They are not doxxed, I don't believe, so I will not I will not be doxing them. But no, it's very awesome. So with regard to like the intersection of crypto and AI. So you mentioned that you've been into AI since your school days, and then obviously you were a pretty early adopter into crypto. Did you instantly make that connection in your mind when you stepped into crypto that like the next evolution of this might be an integration with AI?
No, because what AI was back then was something entirely different. So like my AI journey is maybe different from most because I mean like people talk about Eliza OS now, which is a large language model agentic system, but like in my day, Eliza was just like a pattern matching regex type thing, like with a bunch of possible questions and possible answers. And so it really wasn't until I mean, it was earlier than this, but 2016 is when I became an IBM Futurist and started getting into the IBM ecosystem. And I would
And
say
what does
it's,
that mean, Mark? What is an IBM futurist for those who might not know?
I mean, it's just somebody they bring in to like that is some kind of a leader in their field to both give talks at like IBM events as well as audition technology before it's generally available to the public, and then like give feedback on roadmaps and that sort of thing. So I mean, there's a lot to it, but that's kind of like the visible parts of the job. And so kind of what it's not the same, it's not the exact same, technology as an LLM, but a lot of what Watson did and on the generative AI side is what you would use an LLM for today. And you're talking $30,000 a seat before you even get into usage in like 2016. So there, I mean, yeah, obviously you don't. I mean, I'm a decentralization guy, but there was no feasible way to think about AI as something that's even decentralizable. Is that a word? Able to be decentralized
Sure.
at the time. Um, though I will say, from the flip side, once GPT became something that was reasonable, like something that was usable. And then, like I would say, like in the GPT 2, 3.5 era, it was pretty clear at that point that the flip was absolutely apparent, which was that AI or agentic tools were made for crypto. So I distinctly recall, probably right around the time we filmed whatever that video was that you just saw, I was experimenting with Auto GPT, and there was a situation there, and it was not great. It's not like Cursor today, but there was a point in which it was researching the documentation on how to, because there was no SDK for OpenAI yet, and so it was researching how to properly configure, the curl request to the API. And I saw it in conversation with the little support chatbot that OpenAI had on their API documentation at the time, and it was getting answers out of a agent to agent chat just through even that rudimentary thing that AutoGPT had at the time. And so in my mind, I'm like, this is exactly what crypto could be good for, because micropayments ad hoc in a wallet that's small, not like massive amount. You don't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you give a little agent, $100 worth of, some token, some coin, and it makes little micro payments to other agents that it needs to get information from. And this is like the future of like, how to monetize data in a real way. Like that was, I mean, that's just one possible application. It doesn't even seem to be like the biggest one at this point. But like in that moment, I was like, okay, this is where AI and crypto are gonna be, they're gonna be wedded at some point.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. My breakthrough, definitely a different way of getting there, just because my background was not heavily in tech; it was in finance. But similar concept. When I realized, for me, it was the smart contract platforms. It was a realization, and you guys actually touched on this in the show. Is you would and again, not to keep going back to that specific episode, but just the co-host at the time had made a comment about people not seeing a world where like his grandmother or people might be using something like this. And you made the point, well, this is at the protocol level. Most people are never going to see the protocol level anyway. And it kind of made me realize that the L1 smart contract platforms and even now the L2s are still protocol level. And so the average person is never going to interact directly with a smart contract necessarily, but they will interact with something that interacts with a smart contract, which could very easily be an agent that they're talking to in natural language. And so to me, that was like, oh, this is how you onboard 1 billion people to crypto. They don't deal with the smart contracts at all. The agent does it on their behalf.
For sure. For sure. And this is still something that is like, it's not a point of view that's evenly spread throughout crypto and Web3. But I think if the moment we get there, and I say like it's not evenly spread, there's some more. I mean, Base is getting there, you know, like a lot of the Base wallet and Coinbase, but even still, there's a gulf between how we as crypto native people, which are influenced by the engineers that made our wallets, and like how the normal person uses a finance app. Like I'm not even talking about my grandma at this point or my mom. I'm just talking about like, you know, throw a rock in any direction out your front door and like whoever it gets close to hitting, ask them how to use Cash App. They're not going to have any problem explaining it, Venmo or whatever, but, you know, give them a Base wallet or Rainbow wallet and they're going to be like, why am I having to push the button 6 times to send money? Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like we need to think about abstracting away the complexity for simple, you know, simple applications that people know how to do. They're not stupid. They're just like there's no benefit if all I'm doing is if I'm using crypto for instance, sending and receiving money, to have to, you know, understand why I've got to authorize a contract and authorize the token and then hit send or swap and then send. Like just abstract away all that complexity and, you know, make it clear in a tutorial like what it is that I'm saying yes to or something, right?
Sure.
Like there's ways to pull us back from the protocol level. AI and DEAI gets it. I mean, look at what Eric's doing over at Venice.
With Venice, yep.
Right? It's absolutely DEAI, even though it's probably not a pure play decentralized AI in the way that you and I might think about it with Morpheus, but it runs off of decentralized AI. It takes advantage of the uncensored, you know, capabilities that you can run through that sort of thing. So it's absolutely possible in every other layer of crypto as well, I think.
Sure. No, it totally makes sense. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what Venice is doing and Eric over there is amazing. And I think that like the one thing that's so nice about that is some of the parts from my perspective that they give up on like the pure decentralization allows them to ship things faster and go to market quicker, which sometimes is what the market needs to evolve. And so I used to be in the camp of start as decentralized as physically possible, and then things will naturally work their way back in over time. And I've realized that like I don't know in all contexts if that's the best solution, or if there are solutions where you can kind of in tandem build the decentralized thing next to the partially decentralized thing, and then there's different convergence points, or maybe even like not everything needs the same level of decentralization. For example, me using a GPT to edit an email doesn't necessarily need the same level of decentralization as me using, or like an institution using an AI to do medical research or something that's like heavily proprietary. Although I would like your thoughts on this, because I do know you are a self-titled crypto-anarchist, and so I'm curious, like, how do you define that, and then also how does like that thought process translate to the AI and data side of things, which is obviously like the money and data are intertwined on the crypto side. The AI is now like another layer that gets thrown on top of that when you start talking intelligence.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the crypto anarchist in me. I'm not in this for the tech or the money. I'm in it for the politics. And so I really believe that if you are, I never was a Bitcoin maxi. I'm actually friendly with a lot of maxis. I've spoken at BitBlock Boom a few times. And so like, But I always have tried to reinforce the point, even in that crowd, that we're not here for some new religion. We're here for the effects. We're solutions based, right? We want to have more freedom, right? It's right there in the name of freedom money, right? So if we're here for more freedom, then you have to look at decentralization as a spectrum and a journey, not a one or zero standard, because it just can't be, right? Like there's levels of decentralization and there's a path to decentralization. I think that's what's most interesting about like what the EVM is doing in general, right? They've got stages for classification of what they consider to be decentralized, and then even when you drill down into cypherpunk culture and DAO culture, there's layers and levels to decentralization where some of it exists in a social layer entirely because it's a small enough organization that it's just that's how it has to work. And then there's where other instances where it's 100% on-chain governance, and I don't think that, and this is where I get more into the anarchist explanation rather than the crypto side. I don't think you can ever truly 100% decentralize the social layer out of anything. I think you can get really close, but there's just at the end of the day, we're social people, right? Like we're organisms that have a social component to our neural makeup, and so you have to design around that, and you have to allow things to have a journey, because if you try to boil the ocean, like your decentralized client is going to look like the Ethereum client from 2000 and whatever it was, 13, 12, where it was a clunky, or the original Bitcoin wallet. It was a clunky Windows application that works most of the time, and it's that's not a way to get users. So, and that's not to excuse like the roadmaps that some decentralization and name only projects have taken. I'm not a fan of projects like Hashgraph or Solana. Even when I was a futurist at IBM, I was a vocal critic of Hyperledger because it was during the early days after Ross was arrested and sentenced, where they felt from a corporate level, IBM had to distance themselves from the hookers and blow culture of crypto, right?
Of crypto, yeah.
Silk Road and all that stuff. And so the watchword was, what was it? Blockchain, not crypto, or something. And
yeah, or like then terms like Web3 came out and all these other things. Yeah.
Right. But like, I don't think that's not the right path. There's a right way and a wrong way to take your crypto decentralization journey on any type of level. And I think the idea that you need to have decentralization with guardrails is the wrong approach. That's very uncypherpunk. But to have a maximally decentralized destination, but starting out at a position that's maybe less decentralized, is a totally valid journey to have.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So from a policy perspective, it's interesting that you bring that up because that's part of what drives my interest in crypto as well. I mean, when I first got involved, which was 2016 or no, I guess early 2017 it would have been. The moneyness and the application-ness of Ethereum at the time, which dApps and DAOs were being talked about but really weren't live yet. It was really kind of later that year that those started to pop up, and the ICO craze and all that stuff. That's definitely what initially pulled me in, but it was before I understood like the geopolitical impacts, the personal political impacts, even on a local level. What are your thoughts on like how political systems and governments can try to integrate this stuff in a way that's advantageous? Because a point that I make a lot is any central power that really understands this stuff will oppose it.
Yeah. No. This is a deep rabbit hole. The short version answer to this is I'm very much of a Bucky Fuller guy, Buckminster Fuller, which is you just design better systems than the ones that exist, and they'll get adoption. And I don't know how deep you got into my history. You will find that they will violently at times oppose you. I was incarcerated for a year for using Bitcoin peer to peer in the federal system.
Oh, I
So
actually did not see that.
yeah, it
Is
was.
that something you're able to talk about or can share?
I mean,
What?
yeah, everything's out. I'm off paper. I did my time. I was even off probation a couple of years ago, so it's in the distant past at this point. But and I don't shy away from it. I don't love the experience. It was very much like a Charlie Shrimp situation. I had a
Mhm.
client that I was selling Bitcoin to that they were into some shady things, and it was during that Operation Choke Point years where they're like, okay, well here we got somebody that's selling Bitcoin at a business level. Let's go after him.
Mm.
And there was a bunch of prosecutorial misconduct and other things, but at the end of the day, I wound up taking a plea deal. This is a very abbreviated version of the story. I
Sure.
took a plea deal that put me away for about 11 months.
Was this in the
And
state of Texas?
it was a federal case, but it was
Oh,
in
okay.
Texas. Yeah.
Got it. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize. This is very interesting.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So, I mean, and it's actually very timely because right now there is a law, the Clarity Act in conjunction with the Genius Act, which are both expected to pass and be signed within a couple of weeks now, that would have made the precise statute that I went to federal prison under completely irrelevant, right? Like
Wow.
what I did is about to not be a crime.
Yeah. That's really crazy to think about. Wow. I mean, so what are the feelings behind that? I mean, on the one hand, I do not expect anybody to sit here and be like, yeah, this is a great, this is a great experience. I served time. But on the other hand, if your core principles align with the fact that, hey, this shouldn't be a crime, and now is it somewhat vindicating that it's being
That
turned
it's
that
no
way?
longer going to be a crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely vindicating, and it's absolutely vindicating because so the moment I got out, I was still in probation. Tom Emmer introduced the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, is what it was called then. It's had like 3 or 4 different names every time he's tried to introduce it as a bill. It never got out of committee, but like every time it came, it was literally like I shouted in the office when I saw this thing come across Twitter in front of me. I was like, holy crap, this bill would have made it so I didn't go. And so like I start like, I went downstairs to the Texas Blockchain Council because they're a pretty influential lobbying group. And I'm like, we've got to start pushing this thing.
Yeah,
We've
like
got
right
to,
now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, and it's been introduced, I think probably like 6 times and never made it out of committee. And then, a few weeks ago, Tom Emmer announces that it's part of Clarity, and I know Clarity is about to pass, and it was like this is, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but this is 2 in a row here. I got Ross out, and no, I had not
Hey,
me personally. I had
you're
help.
yeah, you
Uh,
helped though. Your record is pretty solid. So
yeah,
I guess okay, I don't want to make you linger on this too much, but I am curious. Can you talk about just the experience of being incarcerated, specifically at like for a crypto crime at the time? Because there's other big names, like the S. It's a very different thing that we're talking about here. I want to be very clear. But the SBFs of the world, the Rosses of the world, now Roman Pierce is currently fighting his case. What is that like when you're in prison and people are looking at you saying like were you like looked at as a genius? Like you're like a super genius with computers?
uh, yeah. I mean, like, look, I'm not ever going to call myself a super genius because that's kind of weird and braggadocio, and that's not my style. But yeah, no, without like mincing words, like there's a dude that I was locked up with, and I still talk to him this day. And he, due to a bunch of different like things that happened, he's like, "Dude, you're like Lex Luthor, man. You're a supervillain. I want to be your henchman, man." Like it was that kind of
That's
like,
kind of what I'm picturing. I'm picturing,
yeah,
the movie The Joker where he asks why he's laughing and he's like, "You wouldn't get it." Like I'm
yeah.
literally picturing that.
And I was locked up like smack dab in the middle of my time was when the SBF scandal broke.
Mm,
So like that all happened like and so like they're seeing, and it was kind of an interesting time because like this is probably the lowest point dollar amount wise for Bitcoin and the crypto like in, you know biggest dip that's ever going to probably happen, save for maybe like after MT Gox or something like that. And so it was a lot of so the white collar guys were like, aha, so the thing that you thought was going to be the future, they're all like, "Man, this is it, this is the end for crypto." And then like everybody else, literally everybody else that was not a white collar uh, detainee was thinking I was like the going to be in the news next or something, right? Like this is
Yeah. You're the
you're a
guy in the
crypto guy,
chair.
you're
Yeah.
here, so you're definitely going to be on CNBC the moment you get out of here or something.
Yeah, like you must be a big deal in some capacity, which totally,
Yeah.
wow, that's really interesting. That is a really, like, you have a super unique perspective for a lot of reasons, and that one is obviously like very, very unique, even among, crypto people in general, or just
Yeah.
anybody. Have you been following the Tornado Cash and Roman Pierce case then pretty closely?
Yeah, I'm in the family group chat and on Telegram or whatever, like friends and family group chat and Telegram, and I've been following the case pretty closely for all the like the legislation, the bills, and all the different people that were facing
Yeah.
something as
Well, because
far
this is one that has huge implications, particularly tying it back to DAI for things like DAI. Because one of the questions I get very frequently when I talk to people about this space is, well, what about bad actors? And the answer is typically, hey, these are public goods. People use roads to rob banks and escape. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have roads, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't have public goods. And
right.
he is effectively being persecuted. Again, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. Well, not a little bit, very much so. But he's
Yeah,
effectively being persecuted for publishing open source code that somebody was a bad actor with.
for sure. Yeah, and thankfully, I don't know if you followed like the last 24 hours, it looks like he might get a mistrial.
I read that earlier that there was I didn't read it too deep, but it was something to do with the one of the witnesses they called forward, something like this.
Yeah, like the key one of the key witnesses for the prosecution that was a victim of a pig butchering scam. As it turns out, the none of the funds that she was scammed out of even touched his smart contracts or his
Oh
service.
wow.
So, like, there's like, well, why are we even having this trial? Because she's the one that the case hangs on to prove
Right.
that whatever.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Okay.
but like even so, like I feel like this is probably going to be a case that is overturned on appeal simply because, again, just like in my case, the laws have literally been rewritten
Mm-hmm.
while he's in the judicial process that makes what he did not a crime.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be like it's not impossible but difficult, even if there is no mistrial for the DOJ to make their case stick. But having been through the process, it is a bizarre. So like one, here's the hardest part. If he doesn't get a mistrial and he has to make it all the way through to sentencing, um, the issue that he will face, and it's going to be one that a lot of people like. There's probably been like, well, there's been over 300 cases specifically with my statute where crypto people have gone to prison. And you don't believe that you probably don't believe that you committed a crime or that you did something that ought to be criminal. However, your lawyer will tell you at sentencing, if you do not express contrition, you were going to go down for longer.
Yeah.
So, like you got to cosplay like this, like, and so you gotta, I don't know, you do like an actor, you have a process, like I gotta think of something I'm sorry for, and then go like, and then do that sort of thing. But like this is definitely like, you know, at the time I probably meant what I said in the courtroom, but like it's really hard for me, moving forward, and it was really hard for me to get in the mindset where I could appear contrite
Yeah.
because the whole thing did feel so trumped up. And I know that, heaven forbid, if this thing does not get dismissed for Roman, he's gonna run to that same sort of situation, just like Ross had to do.
Yeah.
That was he created a website, and like literally nothing that happened on that website has not happened on Facebook Marketplace or on Craigslist.
Yeah.
But we don't see Zuck or Craig Newmark in prison.
The thing that I thought was so insane about his case specifically, well, one, like all of the other happenings on the side, like for example, the law enforcement members of law enforcement who were prosecuted for committing crimes during the case, which in itself is ridiculous, but also just even if he committed a crime, And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge. Even if he did, the sentencing and penalty was so unbelievably egregious for a first-time offender, non-violent criminal. 24 or something like this at the time?
Yeah.
I mean, it was so incredibly outrageous that I don't. It sucks that it took as long as it did to get overturned, because that should have been like near instant. I mean, obviously that's not how the system works, and they were looking for somebody to, be the bad guy. They needed the villain, and they found him in Ross.
And I jokingly took full credit a minute ago for releasing Ross, but honestly, the only reason he got out was his mom. Like,
Yeah,
his
I've seen her
mom
on a lot of
carrying
stuff.
that
Yeah,
torch. If it wasn't for his mom, Free Ross DAO never would have existed. Like it was that all that money that was raised, all that awareness that was raised over the not just our tenure, but the entire tenure of his prison stay. Like you got to give credit to his mom. One of the
100%.
number two best mom in the world behind my own. I can't rank anybody higher than that. But she's a strong contender for number two for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm super happy for them, as I know you and the whole crypto community very much is. I want to loop this back to DAI and some of the things that are happening. How have you been following relatively closely what Morpheus has done over the last year or so?
I have, and I'm actually looking forward to playing with some of the buy side because of the projects that I'm involved in, the agentic projects. Right now, the best, sadly, because of the way tool calling works, working with the Venice APIs is not quite where it needs to be yet, because they don't have like some of the same tool calling compatibility that you have with the standard OpenAI.
Are you able to talk about what you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. For the last 8 months, I've been working on a stealth startup. I can announce it here first. It's still listed as stealth on my LinkedIn. Sanctum OS.
Okay.
And so the short version is it is a full loop agentic AI self-hosting system. So you can run it off of Venice. Hopefully, we're going to have Morpheus compatibility once we can get ensure that it's like OpenAI tool calling compatible. But basically, you can plug it into any Olama local instance. You can plug it into any cloud model, but it's designed to have just as much or as little on-prem as possible. Just because, especially on the memory side and on the data processing side, because the alternative is to trust OpenAI to be good custodians of their data. And as we know going on right now, they have that New York Times lawsuit where the judge has said, even if you delete a conversation, you have to retain it in perpetuity just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
Some other judge decides that data is relevant, which means no conversation is private and could become part of public record at any given point.
So, okay, can you talk through from a user perspective, like what might the workflow of using Sanctum, what might the workflow of using that look like?
It really depends upon. It depends upon your sophistication level. If you're a dev or an end user coming at it from that perspective, so its core is built around a flavor like an agentic OS called Letta, formerly known as MemGPT. And then the Sanctum is like kind of a suite of middleware that sits around that to flavor their OS into something that's a little bit more user friendly. If you know about MemGPT or Letta, what you know is that it is probably the most robust context shaping agent development environment that you can ask for. And it has like a robust system of like MCP integration or Composio or just straight up Python tool calling. It's all written in Python. It's all self-hostable. Vector database compatibility, knowledge graph compatibility. Like, and if there is some sort of way to inject context into an LLM query, there's already hooks for it in their core. So what we've built is a series of several pieces of middleware that will wrap that entire core and allow not just you as a developer to build and integrate into whatever it is you need to integrate into, but also allow the agents to configure themselves. So everything within MemGPT is API addressable. One of the key pieces of technology that we developed is an MCP server that exposes the entire API for agents to the agents in a way that they can just, pull it up and understand, and they don't have to re-explain the context every single time. And another key piece is the middleware. It's like kind of a WordPress of communications. It allows you to bolt on email or Telegram or Signal or whatever to these agents, so that the agents can really show up like a human anywhere a human would.
And so, does it retain that context like centrally within your device where it's being hosted? Can you like bifurcate that to different devices? How does that work?
I mean, it's so you can make your endpoints whatever. This is generally designed with the Sanctum implementation for your endpoints to be traditional messaging protocols, because those are going to be more securely written than anything I can write. Like Telegram and Signal have a bigger security budget than I do personally as Mark Hopkins.
Sure.
So we're kind of delegating that out to them, but it's an API. If you want to write an app that is just the interface to your agent, you absolutely can do that. And that's how you can, but like everything is stored centrally in whatever it is, whatever environment you give this. So you can run it off your laptop, or you can run it off a VPS that you control if you want it to be always on.
Or like IPFS, something like that, if you wanted to as well.
Yeah, you could. You probably don't want to. So the agentic system is less about decentralization from a data storage, because IPFS exposes it to the public, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so you probably would, I mean, think of it more like, a $12 a month or a $24 a month, like VPS that
Okay.
you want to put because we're not talking about a ton of data. Even if like, I've been running one of my agents for 2 years, and it's got maybe like 700 meg of text data.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I guess I'm overestimating like text data and how much you can actually fit in. Yeah,
Correct.
I see. Okay. Yeah, a lot of stuff I do is like video editing, which are much larger files in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
No, that's very interesting. Is it going to be a permissionless protocol?
Everything is open source and forkable, so it doesn't need to. There's no like node system for it to run on, so it's basically designed so that you don't have to rely on anything other than what you choose your model to be, and that even can be self-hosted, something you don't have to rely on. So, but yeah, there's two ways to use it. The one that we're unveiling this week is just like, I'm a dev, I can follow installation instructions, and then you just, install Docker, or you do the Python apt-get or whatever, or Python pip install. The next version, which should be out in the next maybe 2 weeks, is I'm not a dev. Let me talk to an agent and send you some Bitcoin or some Ethereum, and you'll provision a server for me for this thing to be installed on.
That's the Bo Belmer version that we're talking about here. It's the
Right.
I'm not
Right.
a developer.
But it's still, you own the grid, you own the virtual gridiron, right?
Sure.
So like, if you provision a server, like I'm never going to be able to look in on it, right?
Interesting.
It's on your account. You have full control. It's just that we've got a little agent that knows how to provision a server.
So for that version specifically, I don't know if you've looked into this or not, but registering as a builder subnet on Morpheus could be beneficial to you guys in that version, because, and other people have done this too. You're familiar with the mechanism where basically end users can stake more tokens, and then the builder subnet's receiving a proportional share of emissions based on the total amount of stake they have. The idea there is that if the builder subnet is earning emissions, they could theoretically either use those for liquidity or restake those emissions to then use the virtual machine of compute within Morpheus, which is a similar model to what Venice uses, the Yellowstone model, which Eric basically designed, open sourced for Morpheus, and then used as well with Venice. Shout out Eric again. So that could be a useful way to onboard users for you guys on either version, but definitely that second version where, hey, if you stake X amount of more tokens, now you'll get access to our product because we can restake those emissions, and now the cost of inference is null, from Sanctum's perspective.
I'm looking into that. I have not. There's because I'm a contributor to the Letta The Letta code base, not an owner of it. I have not gotten the Morpheus and Venice SDKs, or not really the SDK, but like the wrapper that it uses
Sure.
merged in yet. Whatever that does, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, whenever you're ready to talk about it, I'd love to help out, or even put you in contact with the right people, because there are greater minds than mine that can make that happen. Mark, while I have you here, is there anything else you'd like to share, or just views on DAI and where the space is headed, or maybe some predictions as to what you think it might look like going forward?
Well, I mean, I think I feel like DAI is inevitable, because the cloud model is simply not going to work for what I think is probably going to be the dominant applications of AI. Like I don't know if you've been following like what's been going on with humanoid robotics, but there's a lot of cool things happening there, and these humanoid robots have dropped in price by a factor of 10 in the last 3 years. It's ridiculous. You can get like a nice 4-foot like G1 Unitree G1 for like 16 grand now, and we're talking like this is something that would have been like $400,000 a couple years ago, and like 10 years ago, the cheapest thing was like a $500,000 can't remember the SoftBank robot. I can't remember the name of the robot, but it was made by SoftBank and it was on wheels. It didn't even walk, right? And that was what IBM used to demo all their stuff. And I don't know if you've ever tried to put anything that relies on a cloud on a mobile, platform before, but I can tell you how many times I've seen IBM demos fail. And they're the IBM guys that made the demo connecting to the cloud instance of Watson. It's just not a workable solution. You need to have local inference, and you need to have self-hostable inference. And when you have local inference and it's not being used the majority of the time, you need to be able to subsidize the cost. And a network like Morpheus or other DEI, decentralized inference clouds are the only way to make that happen. Like I have a couple of servers that I use for inference, just for local things on my Sanctum installation, that like I use it for 6 hours a day at night, and then like the other 18 hours a day it's not being used at all, so I just put it up on the network, and it gets subsidized. It doesn't pay for the entire cost of the VPS it's on, but it does subsidize the cost so that I'm not going out of pocket for owning a GPU in the cloud,
Sure. Yeah.
So like there's a lot of models like that are simply not going to be sustainable if we're purely relying on cloud inference through OpenAI or Anthropic or any of those big guys.
Yeah. Well, I love that take, especially because it shows the importance of what's being built beyond just the core principles. Like I can town square grandstand the core principles of why privacy matters, why decentralization matters. But when you can steelman an argument for the need for DAI from a technological perspective that does not even involve those principles and use the word inevitable, that's as bullish as it gets for the space, I think. So for sure. Awesome. I appreciate it. Mark, thank you so much for hopping on. I really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to catching up, down the line to hear more about Sanctum and how the launch goes.
Happy to do a demo whenever we got it ready.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
You're listening to Brain Power.